At 10 years old, the BRICS is not even more a mere acronym created by a Goldman Sachs economist, but it's becoming an increasing reality. The BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, are intensifying their cooperation, institutionalizing their cooperation, and even creating a unique institution, the New Development Bank. They are home of almost 40% of the world's population, and this means 3.2 billion people generating personal data on a daily basis, generating the most valuable asset in the world, and generating also the technology that will enable to exploit this data and to expand the opportunities for digitalities in the world. This also means that the policy that are being adopted and will be adopted by BRICS country will have an increasing impact on the world digital ecosystem. We are here today to speak about these challenges with our CyberBRICS research fellow, with Dr. Daniel Oppelman, our CyberBRICS research fellow and also researcher at the University of Sao Paulo. Daniel, Brazil has adopted some major changes with regard to digital policies over the past couple of years. One of those changes has interested data protection. So how has data protection been regulated over the past couple of years?
So Brazil has reached in the past few years the level of 100 million internet users, and in this context came up the question of how to deal with data protection. And in 2018, the Brazilian president has signed the new data protection law, Lei Geral de Proteção de Dados, and one of the important aspects of the law was the creation of a national data protection agency, which was before not properly defined in the law, but recently has been passed by the Senate and by Congress. Right now there is a way open to create this data protection agency.
And when one speaks about data protection, it's inevitable also to speak about cybersecurity. So how is cybersecurity and also how is cyber defense framed in the Brazilian context?
In the context of our project, the CyberBRICS project, we have separated cybersecurity in different parts, and cyber defense is one of these parts. And cyber defense has, over the past few years, become more attention in Brazil, also in the academic sector. And there were a couple of policies were passed in the last few years. And one important thing that happened recently was the creation of the new project, the research project on cyber defense in the context of the ProDefesa program of the Brazilian government. And so this is the new project where a couple of researchers from different universities in the country will approach several questions regarding cyber defense policies in the country, and they will also develop international cooperative approaches regarding cybersecurity and cyber defense.
Dr. Ania Kovac, you are the director of the Internet Democracy India project, and you are also one of our CyberBRICS research fellow here at FGV. You have been participating to a variety of digital policy projects over the past 12 years. And what is, in your opinion, the added value of the CyberBRICS project?
I think this is a really important project. Without a doubt, data protection, cybersecurity issues are emerging as the main challenges, I think, in internet policy across the world. But at the moment, it sounds often as if we only have options between an American model or a European model. And the realities of a country like India are actually quite different. And also, I think, speak much more closely to the context of large parts of the rest of the world. It's really, really valuable to be able to work together with researchers from countries that are much closer to India and have much more in common with our context, and to really think about how these questions need to be answered where we come from.
You mentioned data protection, which is an issue that has raised a lot of attention in India over the past couple of years. A lot of initiatives have been developed. So what is your opinion about those initiatives and policies that have been put forward over the past couple of years?
Yes, at the moment we're discussing a draft data protection bill, an e-commerce policy, a DNA bill, and that's just a few of the examples. And obviously we're thrilled to see that the government is really taking this issue serious. There's a bit of concern though from our side about the fact that a lot of these policies really seem to have as their focus allowing an ecosystem to develop in India for the collection of data, quite widespread, which is really focused on making sure that both businesses and the government know the rules. What we think is really important is to remember that in the end of the day, that data is often collected about people, and whether they're personally identifiable or not. Because it is connected to people, that what you do with that data often will have consequences for individuals as well. This is not enough on the agenda, we are afraid. And that connection with bodies and the realization that data is really social, that we have biases vis-a-vis them, is not taken into account enough. I think because the focus is so much on the economy, this myth that data is something that's out there that we just need to grab is really perpetuated. And you see that play out also in how, say, debates around sovereignty are playing out in India. I think the government is rightly concerned about data colonialism, which is another one of those concerns which I think in BRICS countries plays out much stronger than in the rest of the world. But when we talk about sovereignty, I think we shouldn't talk about the sovereignty of the states, but really the sovereignty of the people. And I think some of our rethinking has to take that as its starting point.
Dr. Andrei Shisherbovich, you are a professor at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow and also one of our CyberBRICS research fellows. Anya was mentioning sovereignty, and we know that Russia has hit the headlines over the first part of the year because of new cyber sovereignty laws that were enacted. So what is your opinion about this law?
So Russia enacted the Internet Sovereignty Bill and actually the Internet Sovereignty Law, which introduced rules for traffic exchange inside the country in case of emergency. Its possible consequences of adoption of this law is closure of the internet from the outside world and actually the fragmentation of the internet into national parks. I believe that internet had nothing to do with sovereignty, and the very purpose of the internet is to ensure international exchange of information.
Russia has recently adopted a series of new laws that will impact the development of the digital ecosystem. So what other laws have been adopted that could regulate the internet?
First of all, there's the famous Yarovaya law, which pledged to store all the communications of users on servers for 6 months, and possible reference of this kind of information to the law enforcement authorities. The other one is obligation to store all the personal data of the Russian citizens on servers inside the Russian Federation. So it's so-called localization of personal data of Russian citizens.